Good evening, Patrick, and thanks very much for joining the Mint to talk about AI.
Thank you for inviting me. Looking forward to it.
Brilliant. Well, I was first wanted to start with where your background, how you got involved, how the Rebel Tech Alliance sort of came into existence.
Well, we've only been going for about a year. So there's obviously a long history before that where I wasn't doing this.
Yeah.
Um, and so a year really. But before that, I suppose journey into this started probably around about 2016, around about the Brexit and Trump kind of votes, that sort of time. And it was from then on just gradually realizing that there was something odd going on in the background and how all those things came to be. Um,
What was your role then in 2016? What were you seeing? Were you working in IT, in social media, or what?
no, so that's the thing. So like Rebel Tech Alliance for me is a side hustle. So I have a day job and this is a side thing. So setting up a non-profit to deal with this. So it's a culmination of thinking about the subject deeply and then researching it heavily and then thinking I must do something. So back in 2016, I was not working in this field at all. I've got a day job which is more sort of accountancy and forecasting. So it's to do with building financial models for people. So trying to map out business models, how a business works, how it makes money. So that is the link between my day job and the side hustle is that what what I realized is that it's the problem at its heart is the business model of big tech. So it is. I read a book called Surveillance Capitalism by Shoshana Zuboff. It's quite a heavy tome, quite an academic thing. Um, but that confirmed to me that it is the business model that is the problem. So even though it's kind of seems like I've come out of nowhere or I'm doing this other career or whatever, there is a link, as in I spend all day looking at business models. I was wondering from 2016 onwards, and then from 2018 when the Cambridge Analytica story broke, um, what is going on? Like there's some sort of invisible force in the background, and it was the fact that big tech had invented a new business model, and it was really has a corrosive dark side to it beyond what people see, which is just the targeted ads.
So how would you describe in a nutshell the business model?
Surveillance capitalism is all about those personalized ads. So it's about tracking your behavior and being able to pinpoint advertising to you. It was invented by Google and then Facebook took it and ran with it. Um, so it's all about those creepy targeted ads and all the harvesting of behavioral information while you're surfing the net, using your phone, whatever. Um, and that's basically a new form of doing business that didn't hadn't existed before the year 2000. And Google invented it when they realized that people were just typing in all sorts into their search engine. And you could tell a lot, not just by what they were typing into search, but by what computer they were on, what time of day it was, and where they are located. And it was creating incredible amounts of information, and they just figured out how to monetize it, which was advertising, obviously.
So what was it? You were saying there was something going on. I mean, presumably the dark side. What did you see? What was your experience that triggered the need, to do something about this?
Right. Okay. Yeah. So we eventually got you get back to advertising, but that's not what you see as the problem. The problem was when you looked at the Brexit vote and you looked at the Trump vote, Trump 1.0 back in 2016. It was quite a shock, and people started to realize what was going on was after the Cambridge Analytica story came out, was that there was somehow a way that people were being manipulated to with misinformation, disinformation, the whole fake news thing coming out. Um, so it was kind of looking at it in aggregate as how does this work? How at scale, with billions of people, is information being handled? How could you sway the opinions of certain people? That seems unlikely, right? Like you've got your own opinion, it's not going to be swayed by anyone. Um, However, it turns out we are very malleable as humans, and it can be done through this micro targeting. That's where it all comes from.
So do you think so? There was a switch because I suppose advertising goods, or whether you want a new pair of gloves or a new food or whatever, was the one thing. But was it so when it switched to try and advertise people or effectively get them to vote for Brexit or vote for Trump or whatever, that was the moment which you thought,
Exactly. Yeah. No, all everything we're going to talk about today all comes down to this one phrase of micro targeting,
yeah.
which is the business model. And the ability to zero in on a person and track their behavior over time is the key. So yeah, you're right. It starts off as we could more give you more relevant ads. And so some people are very pleased with that, and they like the fact that they'll see something useful and whatever. That's the nice side of it. The dark side, as you said, is that it could, if you think that micro targeting is the key, then the word targeting is doing a lot of heavy lifting there. And if you can use the word targeting for all sorts, so you can target misinformation at people, you can target weapons at people, you can target hate at people in real life. You can target stalking at people. You can target ads. It's all targeting. It's all the same thing. So it's this atomization of people so that the phone in your hand allows and the websites you visit means that you can be singled out and followed about.
So I suppose a lot of people may have worked this out, if you like, but not everyone has said, ah, well, I'm going to set up a Rebel Tech Alliance to take on these giants worth billions and so forth. Um, what were the is the context that made you a bit more confident than the
Yeah, no,
average
that's a
person?
good question because yes, even when you realize that micro-targeting is a bit more than ads, and it might influence uh, what I see in my news or whatever. And even if it unnerves you, I think in 2018, 2019, people were starting to get a bit unnerved by social media and all this misinformation and Russian interference and all of this stuff, all of which is enabled by micro-targeting. Um, but no, you're right. That doesn't necessarily lead someone to starting a non-profit and researching this stuff 24/7. Um, what did that was just if you extrapolate one stage further from that, away from the individual experience of I'm seeing too much sensational stuff on Facebook, or I'm seeing horrific stuff on Facebook, or um, I find myself leaning way over to the left or the right, and I never used to do that. If you zoom out from the individual and look at it at a society level, which is what I did, especially reading Shoshana Zuboff's writing, you realize that it is actually a threat to democracy over time. So that to me was a hold up, wait a minute, saw my name right. That was a moment. I was like, holy, you know. Um, and that's when I thought, hi, this is actually more fundamental than just being may be problematic for individuals. It is a societal problem. So that's one. That's one reason is that it is actually a threat to democracy in the sense that how can you have democracy when you don't have individual privacy, when you have micro-targeting at scale, when you can sway elections, when you can radicalize people and sensationalize all this misinformation. Big problem. That's one. The other problem was for years I'd been sort of casually worried about the size of these tech firms. So Google and Facebook at the time, and Microsoft, Apple, whatever. As they grew and grew and grew and grew, most people didn't really care because they had the cheap. or free services and the shiny phones, and it was all happy days, right? And we could suddenly do all this cool stuff and we're all connected. But I was always concerned. I was thinking, hang on, these guys are getting too powerful. Um, and once I started looking into the business model, which gives them advertising money with almost no cost to it after they've done their initial investments, you realize why they were multi-trillion pound businesses. And then, so you put those two things together, that it is a threat to democracy itself. You've got these enormous powers rising up, which have been given far too much money, basically. Then it started making me think, well, if they're becoming powerful, what does that mean? And there's two prongs to that. There's the lobbying, where they are unregulated because they can ensure they're unregulated because they lobby the hell out of governments and they make sure that rules are made their way. And then there's also more recently, over the last 6 or 7 or 8 months, starting to realize that the people at the top of these firms are getting their own kind of weird political ideologies and, uh, you know, wanting to do things in that sort of direction. So it's all sort of coming together as a more problem.
But I suppose I'm still, I suppose the question is why, I suppose, why did you think you could do something about it?
Okay, all right. Well, that's slightly different. Um, First question was more about what pushed me to actually try and look at this properly and set up an organization. The second half of that is, well, what was missing? Like, what can we add? Because there's lots of people who would describe the problem. What we realized, and as well, which is what Shoshana Zuboff essentially says, is that if you study this for long enough, you realize that these tech firms cannot be fixed. They just don't want to, they do not care. So you have to avoid them. You have to stop and you have to move and you have to do something else. There is no nice way to use Instagram. There is no good way for Google to operate. It just is incompatible with ethics and democracy itself. So having realized that, I thought, okay, right, well, what do you do? What is the difference? So the thing you have to do is to move away from those tech products because of the way they operate, algorithmically driven and walled garden. You know, you're locked in as a user to this. You've heard of the network effect, of
yeah,
course,
yeah,
where you
yes,
can't leave Instagram because everyone's there or WhatsApp or whatever. Yeah, that kind of thing. So
yeah.
thinking about all that, I decided that there was no one place which really gave all the alternatives and just mapping out for people that it is relatively easy in quite a lot of cases, quite difficult in some, just to move and just switch over to other forms of tech, other versions basically. So for each app you can think of, whether it be Facebook or Gmail or whatever, there are alternatives. And unlike back in 2016, when I first started to get worried about this, the alternatives now function very well and are just as good. So that was it. It was mapping out the problem, and we got this section for alternatives. And
So did
on
you, I
top of
mean,
that,
talk
more
about,
recently,
yeah, I was just thinking, who else did you have collaborators, know people who were expert in IT as opposed to the business case side of things?
yes, so the co-founder of Rebel Tech Alliance is a friend of mine going way back who is very technical. He's a software developer. So he always comes from that side of things. So he knows how tech is made. Um, he was my main kind of collaborator in learning about this. It was him who told me back in, I think, 2017 how Google works, how they keep a digital profile of each person on the planet, literally what you search for, how often you search, and everything like that. It's all recorded and stored in data centers. Seriously, the day he told me that, I was so repulsed. I have not made a Google search. I've not typed a search into Google since 2017. I was just like, that is really creepy. Facebook as well. I was happily blasting my entire life off into the into Facebook servers. Immediately stopped. Um, And it's been a journey. So since
But
2017, 2018, I've now completely don't use any of those services.
I mean, I suppose Google, I can see you don't have any connections, so if you stop using Google, no big deal. But I suppose stopping using Facebook, have you lost all your friends?
Well, if Facebook's the only way you can get a hold of someone, then that's pretty weak. You can fix that. Humans still have other ways of being contacted.
Yeah.
Um,
But seriously, people build up, I mean, even businesses around the connections, don't they? I mean, I suppose I'm on mainly on LinkedIn. That's about it. So I have
sure.
6 or 7,000 connections, people I
Well,
get.
you mentioned business. That's a different thing. So everything on the Rebel Tech Alliance site, at the moment at least, is about your personal life.
Right.
And it is definitely doable to completely extricate your personal life. So you are no longer feeding into big tech's data hoovering for your behavior because they're trying to predict what you're going to do next and influence that.
But they could, I mean, people, I suppose, especially people younger than you and I, etc., who've created most of their contacts, links, etc., on probably not Facebook now, isn't it? It's
Mhm.
Instagram or whatever it is. I mean, it's quite a big loss to be. I mean, because that's what keeps
Well,
people.
it's only a loss if you lose it. So it's effort,
Yeah,
certainly. For me, it happened. Facebook, I wound down over a number of years. So you don't just switch it off, obviously. Like that's just, yeah, you that would be a loss. But what you do is you gradually wind it down over a number of years. You warn people for a long time that you're going to stop using this. You get their phone number, you get their email. It's very easy. But it requires effort, of course. If
that's
there's
really.
thousands of people that's the only way you contact them, then you're just going to have to make a list. You're going to have to go through them. And the fact is, um, I'm never sure what's going to be enough for someone to make them realize that those platforms are hideous and toxic,
Yeah,
and then they move. For a lot of people, it takes a lot. So you tell them that it enables all sorts of stuff, genocides and whatever, and they're just like, yeah, I like it. And you're like, okay. Um, so it just depends. Some people will just put up with anything to have a convenient product. Um,
do you know how many people have switched as a result of your campaign?
as a no, no idea. So we don't track at all. We have no idea who's visiting our site. We have absolutely nothing. We have some vague idea of how many hits we get to the website every month. Um, and our blog, I suppose there's some people are signed up via email. Um, but other than that, we're proudly not tracking it at all. We do get feedback from people directly, but
Yeah.
that's not going to give me an aggregate number of, 100,000 people have switched. But people do come to me and just say, "Oh my God, thank you so much for putting this in one place."
And what about these alternatives? What is their business model?
Right. So mostly it's split between either charging for the product straight out. So this amazing concept that you actually use money instead of your personal
Yeah.
personal data and privacy.
So you
Um,
pay for your privacy, or you pay not to be effectively.
yeah, exactly. You pay to be farmed, or you pay for the products and just like the old days. That's one way. The
Yeah.
other way is if the software is designed to be free and open source, um, and that is where it has been crowdsourced to make it, and therefore they do not need to charge for it.
Because that's an interesting sort of difference also between things like ChatGPT, etc., and the Chinese DeepSeek, isn't it? In that that's open source, and the
Yeah.
business model for open source, it's not totally sort of free, is it? People can use it to create.
No, they're under license. So free in open source, free does not mean free for money. It means free as in Libra, as in permissions.
Yeah,
It's not a money thing. No, mostly in the open source world, it's a case of yes, you can use this, but support us if you like the product. So you've got a product like Signal, which is the alternative to WhatsApp. And that's run by a charity, and they have lots of donors, and you can just use the product for free. It's open source, all the rest of it. But many people, myself included, pay for it. So you just pay every month because it's a non-selfish thing to do. How do you expect these products to continue if you don't pay?
Right.
Um, so I suppose it's a case of just I was the same as everyone else the last 25 years. I was grabbing what I could. I was greedily happy that I could have all this fun tech. But it's over time, it's like, hang on. So how does this work, really? And then, yeah, you go down the rabbit hole, and then now I end up paying for quite a lot of technology. So
What do you know how well these alternatives are doing in terms of building usage?
usage, a lot of it's still compared to the big picture of all the big tech products, they are still fairly niche.
Yeah.
Um, if we look at the most common ones you're probably thinking of is stuff like WhatsApp versus Signal. I don't have the numbers to hand, but I know WhatsApp is in the billions, so it's about 3 billion people would be using that. Signal would be in the very, very high millions, not billions. So it is still quite niche. Um, However, that is not really the way to think about it, because again, you're falling for the whole "is it popular" trick. And back in the day, it was like, well, I'm not going to join that unless everyone else is there. And hey presto, you're trapped. So it is more just a case of starting to get around the network effect. You start local. Um, so, for example, like I don't use WhatsApp anymore. So I quit actually New Year's Eve last year.
Okay.
And I told people for a whole 12 months that I was going to do it. They didn't believe me.
Ah,
Well, they don't because they just go, "What is wrong with you? Like everybody uses this. This is how communication is done." And I'm like, "Well, yeah, that's how it's become, but it shouldn't be because it's meta." Anyway, so I left, and then it took a whole 12 months. And what you do is you just start immediate family, extended family, friends. Actually, I had a lot of friends on there already because 2021, when WhatsApp updated their privacy policy to say we're actually going to share all your data with Facebook, pretty much all my friends were just like, no thanks, and just
so
got on with it.
WhatsApp previously was meant to be encrypted end to end.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point. So the encryption of WhatsApp is interesting because it is a bit of a mirage, actually. It does have end-to-end encryption. It uses the same encryption protocol that Signal uses, as in it got it from Signal. However, it is severely limited in two ways. First way is that it only encrypts the text and video and pictures that you actually put in, so the content. The rest of your conversation is not encrypted at all. And so you're probably thinking, what is how could there be more to a conversation than what you say? Oh, there is a lot. There is a lot. And it's something called metadata. And metadata just means data about data. So if I send you a text on WhatsApp, um, there's the content of the message saying, "Hi, Henry, how's it going?" But there's a lot more information about that that goes with it. So there is the time of day, there is my physical location, there's my IP address, my digital location, there is my contact number, and anything else they've got to do with that. There's your contact number, there's your name, there's all sorts of information. There's the device you're using and that, but mainly location and both people's contact details. Um, and all the rest of it. So there's a lot of data that goes with it. And so what they use that for, this is going back to how Google started with digital exhaust, as they called it. So what people leave behind as they communicate. And it really does power an enormous empire. And in WhatsApp in particular, it basically is like their social graph. It enables them to constantly maintain this accurate picture of who these people really are, where they are, and who they're talking to. So yeah, they can't see what you actually said, but they really don't need to. Because with all the other signals that you leave behind that Meta's tracking around the web and in Facebook and in Instagram, they can do what they need to do.
So
which is
that
try
they
and
pull
predict what
that
you want.
into their total picture of you.
Yeah. So by using WhatsApp, you're feeding that creepy proxy version of yourself, that kind of digital zombie that they've made in a data center of you, uh,
And then because
that
they
they're
can't feed
monetizing.
stuff to you on WhatsApp or adverts or whatever. So
Oh, they are now. Yeah,
are
what adverts are in WhatsApp now. They're gradually rolling out across territories. You might not have seen them. They don't go straight into your messages, like, but they are in is it the communities section where all that stuff? And they've also put a really creepy AI chatbot into WhatsApp,
yeah.
which they've mixed with the search bar to try and trick you to use it. Um, this is a whole rabbit hole we don't need to go into, but it's another reason to hate Meta is their chatbots are like proven to be like I don't know if you want to go down this route, but it's pretty disgusting actually. It's about children and
Oh
they've
God,
I
yeah.
don't know if you read the thing. They have specific guidelines to allow it to be sensual with children because that drives engagement and they just don't care. But we can get back to that. I don't think that's where you want
Okay.
to
Well,
go.
let's no. So I suppose it's interesting with WhatsApp. I mean, there's this concept, obviously, of enshittification, isn't it? That things get worse and worse. So it starts
Mhm.
not so bad, and then they start advertising, and we can
Yep.
see that with AI as well. And I wonder about AI just to move because obviously, in terms of micro targeting and getting information about people, AI will presumably give them much, much, much more information when you're chatting away on a bot.
Yes, yes. It's been proven that people divulge far more information to an AI chatbot than they do even on Facebook,
Yeah.
which is a lot then. It's far more personal, innermost thoughts. And yeah, that is exactly what they want. So my advice to people is never divulge any personal information into a big tech AI chatbot. If you really feel the need to have those conversations with a machine and not with your friends or whatever, then use a local model on your machine, on your computer that's not speaking to big tech. Um, because beyond that, AI has great uses in business. There's all sorts of stuff you can do with it, but divulging your personal secrets into it, why?
So for an AI, there aren't really alternatives, you say, except for having it actually on your computer, but just don't put your personal stuff in. I mean, I was
Exactly.
told by one expert that at the moment something like 70% of the interaction with AI is personal,
Great. Huh.
which was
So we're falling for it again. So it's the
so
same thing over again. It's the when social media took off and we all just started pouring our lives into it. Just think, because it was fun. I loved it. I was pretty much hooked on Facebook. I couldn't stop checking it every 5 minutes. Loved it. Um, and then I realized, oh, hang on. There's me and the people I think I'm talking to, and then there's Mark Zuckerberg just next to me watching. And it's the same thing all over again. So yeah, and you can see that with OpenAI. They've now started putting ads into OpenAI. Why would they do that? Well, it's the micro targeting I was talking about earlier. It's going to drive big bucks for their advertising.
because on the face of it, they can't make money unless they do the advertising. And of course, pornography has driven the internet from the very beginning, hasn't it? So
Yeah, I mean they announced the AI girlfriend sensual chatbots before the ads. Yeah, so that was pretty obvious.
so we can see where things are going on this. I mean, even if you, I suppose, using it in business, I wonder um, how that will be in shittified. I mean, is there any safe space?
I don't know. I mean that's the business part is the second stage of enshittification. As you know, have you've read the book by
Well, I've listened to the
yeah.
podcast,
So of
etc.
course, this is the theory from Cory Doctorow, who
Yeah,
showed enshittification is how a platform goes. Stage one is they're good to users and they lock them in with free services or whatever. Stage two is that they start to ignore users in favor of businesses
yeah.
and move towards more the advertising model. And then stage three is they start to be crap to businesses and users and just start to get the money out to their shareholders. So yeah, business use yeah, there is, and they start to gradually crank that down, as you say, but they want to just get the money out to the shareholders.
And I'm told that the addictive nature with ChatGPT, with well AI, will be that you there are some which know you, you know, that the more you feed into them, the more you need
Mm.
them and the better they are. So you're sort of stuck with one
Yeah.
that has all your
Yeah,
information.
but that's the thing. So you just want to take a look in the mirror and say, why am I doing this? Why do I need to build a AI friend? Perhaps that's not a wise thing to do. And the sad thing about it is people do anthropomorphize it a lot. Like they say it's thinking and it knows me, and it doesn't know anything. It's not thinking. It
Yeah.
is just an autocomplete. It's just saying, based on the text you gave and based on the millions and billions of parameters I've got, this is the next thing that should come out. And don't get me wrong, that is incredibly useful and it can be amazing for, especially for business use, but not to be trusted when you're just divulging into these companies.
Are there any AI companies that, like the ones, the alternatives, you know, that might be safe, will have be driven by different motivations, or is it the fact that you need so much money to build AI systems?
Yeah, okay, so to have them really performant, so they're very fast and very capable, no, there aren't. If you need that kind of performance, you are stuck with OpenAI, Anthropic, or Google, or some of the Chinese models. Um, what a lot of people are realizing is that for many tasks, you don't need that absolute top level, and you can have smaller, more capable but smaller models just for specific tasks. And that's kind of where the industry is going, is being a bit more specific about what they're for.
And that's when you download them onto your computer. I tried that and it did slow down my computer dramatically. So,
Oh God, yeah. Like anyone watching this will be screaming at the screen, going, "You can't make the local models do anything." Well, this is you can't make them do what the frontier models do. No, correct. But it just depends on your use case. If you're wanting just to summarize some text, like we were talking about before, you can definitely do that. If you want it to do live coding and agentic stuff as you type, not really. You can if you have stuff like Quen, their 30 billion parameter model, which still takes quite a chunky computer to run it, but that can actually be fairly useful. However, it's not going to be as good as Claude Code, of course. Um, however, there aren't that many people that need the cutting edge.
and
For
how is it going to? I mean, are you in the camp of when will the crash, the AI crash happen, or if the AI crash will happen?
No, I'm in the camp of when. I've been reading a lot of information from a guy called Ed Zitron, and he's a chap who's got a podcast called Better Offline, and he's got a blog called Where's Your Ed At, and it's great. So he's gone into super detail on the finances of it, and that appeals to me because my day job is in finance and business models. And this guy, who's more of a, I think he's a tech marketing guy at heart, but he's learned how to read these financial statements of all these companies and has gone down the rabbit hole about proving that they are unprofitable. So proving that AI companies just cannot run profitably, that the data center thing is a bubble that will burst and no one can pay anyone else back and they haven't got the revenue they have. So despite there being some use cases, it looks unsustainable and it does look like things are going to pop fairly soon, like within the year.
And what happens when they pop? Because I mean, there's one sort of thesis that the open source stuff will survive and be built on, but the other ones, the commercial ones, etc., if they're not making profit and their IP, etc., they'll die.
Yeah. Well, he jokingly says there's going to be a lot of laser tag arenas because his data centers are giant. But I honestly don't know what will happen to them. Um, but I think it'll be pretty devastating because it feeds right up into the stock market and into um, your pension funds and all these investments. And it's basically the entire US stock market is massively top heavy with tech, overpriced tech stocks. And when that goes pop, you're going to get a 2008 style crash. So in terms of the day to day, what will survive? Um, I don't really know. Yes, there will be some models that survive, but we won't have so many of these massive data centers to run them through. So you're going to need, well, we're going to need some of these companies that have stopped selling to consumers. I don't know if you've seen that the cost of buying components for computers has gone way up because all these companies are now just serving the data center market. And so if you want to buy a chunky load of RAM for your computer to run stuff at home, it's costing you about 4 times as much as it used to now,
Wow.
which is sad. So hopefully that would reverse. That would be a thing that would happen. But basically, I think a lot of these companies would go under. I don't quite know what would happen to the likes of Anthropic and OpenAI when they go bankrupt. Um, but essentially, it's impossible. What it boils down to is this: like when you use these companies, you pay either on a subscription, which is 100 or $200 a month, and if you run it as your business runs on those models, you would connect directly to them through what's called an API, and then you would pay per million tokens or whatever. So it's a sort of pay as you go instead of a subscription. The the subscriptions are heavily subsidized. So both OpenAI and Anthropic and Google, they're all making heavy losses on those. People tend to use way more than their subscription is paying for, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So I think what would happen is that as we get towards this collapse, that they're going to have to start showing you the real cost. And so someone who was paying $200 a month and doing all sorts of great coding stuff really is going to be having to pay between $3,000 and $5,000 a month to keep that company profitable.
Yeah.
That's quite a jump. I'm not sure many people will wear that. And then also, if you run a company that is calling into those APIs all the time, let's say I've built a company that uses AI under the hood to do something. Suddenly, I've got to charge that onto my customers. My customers leave. It's not profitable. You cannot run. It's just the cost of using AI is a hidden cost at the moment, and it is going to be prohibitive.
So we better not get too addicted and used to it, requiring it because we might well lose it or not.
Yeah, that's the idea. Or lose it or have to pay like 50 times the amount. Yeah.
Ah,
So
well, which might be a good thing in terms of the rebel tech alike, because it will push people maybe away from big tech.
true. That last part of the conversation we just had, I was talking more about professional applications. Um, really, the whole thing with the subscriptions veers more into like vibe coding and regular people having a go and building fun stuff. I think that will suffer because they'll be like, damn, I thought it was only $20 a month. And now it's 180. Or I
Yeah.
thought it was $200 a month and now it's 4,000. It's like, no, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'll just use the SaaS product.
And what
But
about the person who's chatting away to their chatbot about that?
now that one, yeah. So I don't know. So whether they can still afford to run the free versions from the advertising they're getting. So we're back to the Facebook model, basically, which is it's free forever and don't think about what's happening to the data. Um, I honestly don't think they'll be able to because unlike social media, the business model is reversed, and the more you persuade people to use it and the more heavily they use it, the more losses you make as an AI company because each call of inference and forget the training costs, they're huge, but the cost of inference is a loss maker each time.
So
So you're
even
compounding losses.
you'd have to sell a hell of a lot of adverts.
You'd have to sell a crazy amount of adverts. So the only way I can see them surviving, and you can actually, it's in the news this week, is for them to, an expression I heard is exit via the state, which is essentially get all of these contracts that covers for all their private losses with the public. So you can see them going into defense. Do you see the news about Anthropic were threatened that they have
Yeah.
to leave the Department of War? Um, a
Yeah.
load of posturing. They're trying to milk that to look like the good guys, but they don't care. They're just the same. They quite happy to be in weapons and whatever and surveillance. They don't care. Um, so yeah, that's probably where they'll try and rescue themselves, is just become part of the state, the surveillance.
So watch out for that. In the UK, yeah, we've got the NHS being taken over and so on, haven't we? In the Department of Defence, etc., etc.
Well, exactly. Like we need to mention this company Palantir.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm frightened by the number of people who don't know what that means. I don't mean the Lord of the Rings where it came from, but the
yeah.
but the company Palantir. Um, I would just encourage anyone reading this or seeing this is just immediately search it up and have a look, because they are horrific. They are one of the biggest data mining and surveillance companies on the planet. They're an American company. They're run by a guy who specifically wants democracy to end, a guy called Peter Thiel.
Yeah.
So look into him. He's one of the original tech bros. And they're bad news. And they've got their hooks into all sorts of governments in Europe as well, including the UK, especially the UK, and the NHS, like you said, which is a huge data trove that they really want to get their hands on.
So the bad news, actually, they might survive because they're not dependent on, using.
Yes, yeah, that is the bad news, exactly, because we are not shouting loud enough at our government to say we don't want you to use such people, please. So yeah, they might survive.
Maybe that's your next campaign for the Rebel Tech Alliance.
Well, no, it isn't, because we are very specifically about individuals and what you can do to, like, basically our collective action, because that's what you're talking about. It's like lobbying a government to make policy choices that are better. We don't do that on purpose because there are already some really great organizations that do, like Foxglove or Privacy International, EFF, all these people. So I support them, I pay them every month, and I cheer them on their way, and I sign their petitions and everything else. We're not about that. So we're about your own personal protest from your house. So our
Okay,
collective action is a walkout of away from this technology. And in fact, we've made a program called the Big Tech Walkout, which is exactly that. It's what each individual can do, and at scale, that will have an effect.
brilliant. Well, so the final message is walk out. Go to
Well,
the
it is, yeah. It's like, having researched it for years and years and years, you come to the sad conclusion that unfortunately there is no nice way to use these products. You have to just switch entirely. And so we made this program called the Big Tech Walkout, and it's linked in our blog, the Big Tech Walkout 2026 program, and it's just step by step going through each category: email, messaging, browsers, social media, the lot, just step by step, and just telling you how to do it, and showing you all the alternatives as you go along. It's really
well,
easy.
we'll put that link under um, the information in our magazine too, and hope everyone takes that step. I'll have to
Brilliant.
start doing it myself. Okay, thanks very much, Patrick. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
And likewise.